Now
on 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app.
Vince Coglianese.
Well, good afternoon to you. It is 3:06 here, News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we are making sense of the news in the wake of a big presidential debate. And live from our news studios right here in Washington. This is the first live local program in these studios, so bear with us as we go. I think it'll be great, though. It's great. This is a beautiful studio. It's really nice here. KATHERINE Hamm is going to join us this hour at 3:30. We're going to talk to her about what happened in that debate last night. Also, she's going to talk about some ways that you can support the heroes of our country on this September 11th. Roger Marshall, the U.S. Senator from Kansas, is going to be here at 4 o'clock. And then Chris Bedford joins us from The Blaze. That's at 5 o'clock. Looking forward to conversations with everyone and looking forward to speaking with you at 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. Taking your calls this hour. Your reaction to the debate last night, what did you think of it? How did it go? I will say, I try to avoid as much as I can. In the past, I've followed social media during the debate to kind of see how people were reacting. But last night, I set my laptop on my lap, which is why they name it that, and opened up the screen, watched my television. I was consuming the debate, trying to get the body language and everything that was happening. And I was typing down notes like crazy. And my wife and my kid, they would turn to me, "What happened? What was that?" I was like, "I don't know. Stop." I'm like typing. I'm typing sentence after sentence, summarizing what I'm seeing on screen and consuming all of this and trying to avoid kind of the outside voices to make me think about these things. And what I realized is normally in a presidential debate where Donald Trump is a participant, I know when I feel like it's going well because I'm cheering. Yes, exactly that. Or I'm laughing out loud at the dunking he's doing on his opponent or whatever it might be. Last night was different. Last night was different because I realized at the conclusion of the debate that most of my reaction was yelling at the TV screen, was being severely annoyed by what I saw playing out. And I don't, look, President Trump is responsible for only his part, but he was only 25% of that stage. And I have to say, having had a chance I reread the whole transcript this morning, and having had a chance to now go through the debate in its entirety, basically 2 times, I'm a little less, let's say, less annoyed at Trump specifically about last night than I maybe was at the conclusion of the debate. My annoyance, to the extent that I had any for him, was just that Kamala Harris, who is the most elitist establishment candidate you've ever encountered, is like she had an entire team of people prepping her for a week on what kind of scripted lines and delivery that she would have. Now, none of it was designed to actually present policy ideas. I mean, she coughed up a couple that she tried to express things. I'm going to give away money to these people, give away money to these people, give away money to these people. But most of it was designed to try and take Trump off balance. That was it. It was like, I'm going to say something mean about rally sizes. I'm going to try and draw him into that. That's what it was. And she was, as you know by now, all that happened last night, where it was a 3-on-1 situation. You had 2 moderators who were fully committed to attacking Trump, quote, fact-checking, not with facts, with lies. I'm telling you, lie after lie after lie, delivered by the people who were supposed to be the moderators, the disinterested middlemen. Anything but. They were on Team Kamala. And at this point in our understanding of the media, we should not be surprised by that at all. And we recognize that the legacy press has decided that it's the Democrats that they're going to tether themselves to, and it's the Democrats whose interests are going to advance. And in that last debate that was on CNN, I can't even believe that it happened this way, but just given the circumstances, there was a lot of appetite on the left to eject Joe Biden from that race. CNN sat back and didn't interfere as Joe Biden self-immolated. And then you saw on all the cable networks that night immediately, well, maybe it's time for Joe Biden to go. Maybe we should have a conversation about Joe Biden leaving. That was all for political expedience. They needed to eject Joe to get a better replacement in. And all of it converged into last night's presentation. To the extent that you had feelings about what you were witnessing or listening to, something you need to remember, part of the reason your feelings were emanating this way were because you were remembering Joe Biden's disastrous debate performance. Joe Biden, who couldn't even function on that stage, could not function. And so the floor was very, very low for a performance from the Democrat last night. Now, I said earlier this week that my expectation was that Kamala Harris was going to show up and be unimpressive. And having now watched the debate last night, I'm modifying my thought. One, I'm always willing to be proven wrong. She didn't run into the end of a sentence and fail to finish it. That didn't happen. I thought that would happen. It didn't happen. But in terms of like her ability to impress an idea upon the audience, to convey something important, to sway undecided voters, for her, I'm telling you right now, it was an unmitigated disaster. What she did last night was fan service, to the extent that she has fans. She was trying to pick at Donald Trump, get him to react, advance a number of lies about stupid debunked stuff like the Charlottesville hoax or the bloodbath hoax. She just lied after lie after lie after lie. It was fan service. It wasn't an attempt to appeal to the broad American middle. It wasn't an attempt to tell people how she was going to improve their lives. Instead, it was like some left-wing fever dream come to life. And even on all of the legacy news media outlets last night, when they went to their panels, they went, you know how the television networks have these dial panels where you get a bunch of independent, undecided voters, they sit, they watch, and then they assess, how did things go? The networks were really shocked by the extent to which the viewers stuck with Trump or were more interested in Trump by the end of the debate. And to be honest with you, I'm surprised by that. I didn't realize that. Maybe I'm too close to it. I obsess over the details too much. Sometimes you shouldn't overthink these things. People watched this debate, and quite a few of them walked away thinking, okay, I wasn't certain. Now I'm certain. I'm with Trump. For instance, on CNN last night, take a listen to this. This is on CNN last night, a snap poll right at the conclusion of the debate. And among CNN debate watchers, they concluded that they would rather have Donald Trump in charge of the economy than Kamala Harris.
Get the economy here. Who would better handle the economy is what we asked. Going into the debate, before the debate, 37% said Harris, 53% Trump. After the debate, again, margin of error stuff here, but numerically she lost a little ground. 35% said so after the debate, that she would better handle the economy. 55% said Trump, and we know that is one of his strongest suits across the polling in this election, and he seemed to hang on to that piece in this debate tonight, according to our poll of debate watchers. And
yeah. Meanwhile, another CNN focus group panelist, they go to her and they ask her, tell me your thoughts on all of this. And she says, honestly, I'm just thinking about what my life was like when Trump was president.
Was actually going to make our country better. And we're in an incredibly unique situation where we've had both of the candidates in office before, and we've gotten to see what they would do. And when facts come to facts, my life was better when Trump was in office. The economy was higher, inflation was lower, things were better overall. And now with Kamala's administration, things haven't been so fantastic. And she's saying she can fix the problems that her administration has caused, but I just don't know if I can afford to take that risk.
Yeah, I don't know if I can afford it. So here she is with the benefit of the wide view. Wait a second. Like, forget one debate. Let me tell you, I'm just making a comparison between a 4-year period and a 3.5-year period, and I know which period I was doing better in. And she's not alone. The New York Times has a piece up today. Again, even the New York Times. Headline, pundits say Harris won the debate. Undecided voters weren't so sure, says the New York Times. They say a media reaction from political analysts favored Ms. Harris, whose attacks appeared to rattle Mr. Trump. She goaded him over the various criminal and civil charges against him. The tyranny, by the way. And Trump appropriately called it out, the weaponization of the government and the moderators. What a joke they were. What a joke they were with that last night. And so many other subjects. Kamala said his former aides considered him a disgrace and that world leaders laugh at him. At one point, she asked whether he might be confused, a stinging line, given Mr. Trump's relentless mocking of President Biden's mental acuity. The New York Times concludes it's stinging. They didn't ask Donald Trump if it was stinging. They just said, it's stinging. And she questioned his emotional stability by saying he wasn't capable of processing his loss in 2020. But not all voters, especially those undecided few who could sway the election, were effusive about the vice president's performance. In interviews, these undecided voters acknowledged that Ms. Harris seemed more presidential than Mr. Trump, and they said she laid out a sweeping vision to fix some of the country's most stubborn problems. But they also said she didn't seem much different from Mr. Biden. And they want change. They cite a woman who's 34 years old. She lives in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Her name's Kayla Miller. Keela Miller. And Keela said this. She grew intrigued by Kamala Harris. She had voted Democrat in past presidential elections, but she decided to stop voting altogether about a year ago. Her own situation and that of other black women in Milwaukee had not improved, she said. On Tuesday, she felt nudged unexpectedly toward Mr. Trump. She watched the debate. The Milwaukee, a 34-year-old black woman lives in Milwaukee. She watches the debate, and she tells the New York Times that unexpectedly she felt nudged towards Donald Trump. Quote, Trump's pitch was a little more convincing than hers, Ms. Miller said. I guess I'm leaning more on his facts than her vision. Ms. Miller said that while her heart pulls her to Ms. Harris's potentially history-making candidacy, she finds herself thinking fondly of her old life. Quote, when Trump was in office, not going to lie, I was living way better, she said. I've never been so down as in the past 4 years. It's been so hard for me. So here you have undecided voters, people who, among those who exist in the country, people who have voted for Democrats in the past. And I'm looking at quite a few media headlines and interviews, and again, it's anecdotal. You can't say this is a poll. It doesn't give you, but CNN had that Snap poll afterwards, and what you're finding is that a lot of voters responded very favorably to Mr. Trump yesterday, President Trump. Borrowing the New York Times' phrasing, to President Trump yesterday, they responded very favorably to him, which is good news. I like that because I'd like to see him prevail. I want to see him win this election. This was a big audience, right? This was the big one. And it was a 3-on-1 tag team dedicated to taking Donald Trump down as the moderators jumped in and were trying to hold Trump or throw haymakers themselves. Now, I want to talk about that, though. ABC, like, what's going on there? Well, the New York Times reported back in August, a month ago today, that the woman who runs ABC News is one of Kamala Harris's best friends. And they say, on paper, the potential for a conflict of interest. Again, the New York Times is like, this is such a big deal that kind of seems like a conflict of interest. They say the potential for a conflict of interest seems obvious. ABC News, the host of next month's high-stakes presidential debate, falls under the purview of a top corporate executive at Disney who happens to be longtime friends with the Democratic nominee, they write. The executive, Dana Walden, first met Kamala Harris in 1994. Their husbands, Matt Walden and Doug Emhoff, have known each other since the 1980s. So Dana Walden, one of Kamala Harris's best friends, and Dana Walden's husband, Matt Walden, is Doug Emhoff's best friend since the 1980s. And this is ABC News. This is who's running the show over there. And let me remind you, the ABC debate was set up when Joe Biden was still the nominee. So they got exactly what the Biden people wanted, which is a rigged debate. Kamala Harris joked at a fundraiser in April of 2 years ago, 2022. She said, in many ways, Dana and Matt are responsible for my marriage, she says. She was at a fundraiser at their home in Brentwood, California, a wealthy Los Angeles enclave where Kamala Harris and Doug Emhoff also own a residence. The Waldens, Vice President Harris explained, set up a couple who in turn had set her up with Mr. Emhoff on a blind date. So, again, the woman who runs ABC News, who's in charge of it, one of Kamala's best friends, set up Doug Emhoff with her, got them married. They've been friends for decades. 1994 is when she started being friends with Dana Walden. Let's see. That's 30 years. That's 30 years that they've had a friendship. Since the 1980s, Matt Walden and Doug Emhoff, that's nearly 40 years that they've had this friendship. They get to call the shots. They structure this debate, and then their employees dutifully carry out the mission that they have for them. And the Waldens are big donors, too. Not only are they hosting fundraisers for Biden and Kamala, in 2023, Ms. Walden donated $20,000 to support Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. That's it. It's as plain as day. And I love how some of the ABC News excuses, including this New York Times piece, oh, well, she has no impact on the editorial staff. Oh, please, spare me the garbage. She's your boss. And she dumped $20,000 of her own money into getting Kamala Harris elected, and you're going to go in there and savage Kamala? You're going to take her out at the knees? You're going to actually scrutinize her? You don't want to do that. Now, when the boss has dumped $20,000 into her campaign, it's a scam. It's a total scam. And it's also 322.
WMAL, making sense of the economy because it's your money and your retirement. Download the WMAL app to stream us for free.
Let's go to the phones. Joe, Silver Spring, line 3. Joe, good afternoon, sir. You're on the Vince Coglianese Show.
Good afternoon, Vince. Thank you very much for taking my call.
Yes, sir.
I just wanted to say that I started to listen to the debate, and when David Muir asked Kamala about are you better off, are people better off than they were 4 years ago, and she would not answer the question. She did not answer the question, and he just sat there like the dutiful Democratic slave that he is. And I said, that's it for me. Okay, I know where this is going.
Yes.
And I didn't even wait long enough to listen to what his insignificant arm ornament might have asked. I just left, and I said, that's it. I know what's going on. We got a man who's got a proven record, and we've got a snake oil saleswoman who flip-flops more than a flounder on a wood-hot wharf in July.
Yes, that's true. And Joe, I'll tell you what you missed. When you stepped away, and I don't blame you for that, what you missed is that they gave the exact opposite treatment to Trump. So when Trump would answer a question the way he wanted to, David Muir would immediately say, that's not what I asked you. I asked you, for instance, it was about January 6th. Trump was talking about Nancy Pelosi screwed up the security for the Capitol on January 6th, which she did, not taking the National Guard. And he goes, I didn't ask about Nancy Pelosi. I asked about you. I was like, really? Because when you asked Kamala earlier about the crappy state of the economy and she just danced away from the question, you didn't hold her accountable for not sticking to the topic. Spare us. It was disgusting, Joe. You're right about that, and I'm glad you flagged it. All right, coming up, Mary KATHERINE Hamm joins us. We'll take more of your calls. I've got a lot of debate analysis to do. Let's do it together. It's ahead.
News Talk 105.9 WMAL.
Making sense of the news.
Hey, good afternoon to you. It is 3:35 here, News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we're making sense of the news. Coming up, Senator Roger Marshall from the state of Kansas is here at 4 o'clock. And then at 5 o'clock from the Blaze, Chris Bedford joins us. We'll talk, of course, about the state of this presidential race and so much more. You can join us at 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. Yes, indeed, the ABC News debate, if you can even call it that, was, it was live last night.
It's an honor to have you both here tonight.
Good evening. We are looking forward to a spirited and thoughtful debate.
So let's get started. I want to begin tonight with the issue that voters repeatedly say is their number one issue, and that is the economy and the cost of living in this country. Vice President Harris, you and President Trump were elected 4 years ago.
Wait,
and your
what?
opponent on the stage here.
President Trump was elected. This guy thinks Donald Trump is the president of the United States. How about that? He's an election denier.
Tonight often asks his supporters, are you better off than you were 4 years ago? When it comes to the economy, do you believe Americans are better off than they were 4 years ago?
Of course, and then she didn't actually answer the question. Joining us now to assess what happened last night, Mary KATHERINE Hamm is here, the host of the Getting Hammered podcast and a Fox News contributor. Mary KATHERINE, good as always to chat with you.
Hello, how you doing?
I'm doing okay. What was that last night?
Well, so I'm glad you played that first clip because I think that the you could call it the ABC debate because there was a lot of moderator input from ABC, right? There was like way too much of that. What was interesting to me about this is that if there was a gimme question for Trump from these very hostile moderators, it was that first one, his mistake about Trump being president aside. And she didn't answer the question. And here's what Trump missed, is when it came to him, he should have nailed her. I'm talking like reversed tomahawk dunk territory. She did not answer the question. David, we know why she didn't answer the question. She didn't answer the question because she knows the answer is no.
Yes.
People are not better off than they were 4 years ago. She knows it, I know it, and American voters know it. People in Pennsylvania know it, right? If he had landed that attack on question one, I think almost no matter what he did for the rest of the debate, he would have won. And from the first second, I was like, it's not good he didn't do that. And it did not bode well for the rest of the debate.
Yeah, I mean, it is true that President Trump, I think, had some simple missions last night. One of them is to remind the audience that who owns the misery, who's been responsible for it, and that's Joe Biden and Kamala Harris working as this awful tag team. And the state of the economy was much better under Trump. And all of these, I was just reading off of a New York Times report about undecided voters who weren't really that swayed towards Kamala Harris last night because they have the experience that you just laid out, Mary Catherine. They're looking, they see what happened economically for them under Trump, and they're saying, including a 34-year-old black woman in Milwaukee. She said, I'm kind of leaning towards Trump because my life was a lot better when he was in office.
Yeah, and I think to the extent that Trump can emphasize that reality on the ground does not work with her rhetoric, right? The idea that she's disconnected from this administration, the idea she has nothing to do with any of this, the idea she can turn a page, it's all false. And she can't do it because she's part of this administration. She's part of all these policies. And the more he can make that clear, the better off he is. However, reality is also going to make it clear, which I think is what those voters are responding to. And that's a problem for Kamala because no matter Trump's performance, those people feel what's happening and they will continue to feel it because she ain't making any changes because she hasn't made changes for 4 years because this is what they want to do. These are the policies they want.
Yeah. Some years ago, we remember Candy Crowley getting involved in a CNN debate trying to fact-check Mitt Romney, and it turns out what she said was wrong, and it was one moment in that debate. Meanwhile, last night on ABC, Lindsay Davis and David Muir, the two of them, they relentlessly jumped in to attack Donald Trump for whatever he was saying, and very frequently the things that they were saying were completely incorrect or misleading. What did you think of their participation in the debate last night?
Yeah, look, if you're going to go out on a limb and you're going to live fact check, you need to make sure you are 150% right. Like it just, unless you should leave it to the candidate. That's what I think, because we can do all that after the debate and they can call each other on things. I don't think you should do it. But if you're going to do it, you need to nail it. And they were so far from nailing it in terms of journalistic accuracy. But what they did is they nailed it in another way, which is to help her. That was the goal. They're sort of strategically ignorant of any of her lies, right? It was Abby Phillip of CNN who tweeted like, hey, if there's asymmetric lying, there's going to be asymmetric fact-checking, ignoring that she lied about the bloodbath comment. She lied about the fine people on both sides comment. She lied about abortion care up until 8 and 9 months and her record on it. She lied about her record on any number of occasions. And they just let it lie.
They let it go. They let it go constantly. I'm going to play a piece of audio here. This is President Trump last night raising that the crime rate is up across the country. Just the ABC jumps in to try and stop him and says, well, no, wait, the Biden-Harris administration says it's the opposite. Take a listen.
Nothing done like this at all. They've destroyed the fabric of our country. Millions of people let in. And all over the world, crime is down all over the world except here. Crime here is up and through the roof. Despite their fraudulent statements that they made, crime in this country is through the roof. And we have a new form of crime. It's called migrant crime. And it's happening at levels that nobody thought possible.
President Trump, as you know, the FBI says overall violent crime is actually coming down in this country. But Vice President Harris,
the FBI they were defrauding statements. They didn't include the worst cities. They didn't include the cities with the worst crime. It was a fraud.
Okay, so I want to make a point of emphasis here. Donald Trump was completely and totally correct about that. And John Lott, who's living is digging into this, pointed out that 31% of police departments in 2022, including Los Angeles and New York, stopped reporting crime data to the FBI. Yeah. So for the Biden-Harris administration to come along and say, well, crime is down, yeah, because Democrat cities are not reporting what's happening in their cities.
Yeah, I'm so glad that he pointed this out. It was one of his very good moments in the debate because he was armed with that fact where he could fact check them, and that was really important. I also wish he would sprinkle in some of the stories of people like Laken Riley and her family who have lost people to tragic murders by illegal immigrants who the Biden administration was happy to let into this country and not deport. So I wish he would put that in there. But this is really important. And by the way, this is a problem with public trust in general. You probably in Northern Virginia, a couple of places, it turns out that students aren't testing as badly as you might expect post-pandemic and schools being closed for a long time. Why? Because they changed the way they did statistics so that they don't have to answer for things that are getting worse. Right. This is strategic. It happens in a lot of government agencies, and it is a fraud upon the American people who pay for them to do their job.
And I have to say, you heard it in the David Muir retort there, but Lindsey Davis did this too. They kept going. They would say something to Trump like, well, actually, sir, everyone knows that's not true. Okay, but I want to go to Kamala Harris now. And it was the most frustrating high school nonsense I've ever seen. Like, it was just like, no, that's totally not true. I have better sources than you. And then they would go, but I want to ask Kamala Harris a question. Right. Was that as annoying to you as it was to me?
Yeah, I didn't like how they redirected every time. You could tell every time he was onto something, they would redirect to a new topic. Like, yes. Mr. Former President, I want to be done with this topic. We're going to move to something else. Well, it's like, yeah, because he was landing a punch. They were bad. They were bad.
Yes, indeed. There was a lot here. You had Lindsey Davis at one point asked Kamala Harris about her flip-flopping, and then Kamala Harris didn't bother explaining anything, actually. Because Lindsey Davis said, well, you said you wanted to ban fracking, now you don't, and you said you wanted a mandatory government buyback program for assault weapons, now you don't. You wanted to decriminalize border crossings, now you don't. So why have your policies changed? That's the gentle way the question was asked. And then Kamala Harris said, I want to answer every single point you just raised, and then she refused to. She never did. And they let us slide.
This is my favorite because she lied in the introduction to her answer. She's like, I'm going to answer everything that you just gave me. And then she didn't do it. And nobody was like, hey, you said you were going to answer all of those.
Yes.
Right? And she flatly, obviously did not. She didn't even really answer the fracking one. She said some sentences, but they did not explain why she's had an evolution in any way, shape, or form. Yeah. And I believe skipped over the fact that they did ban fracking during the Biden administration on public lands for a while. Like she indeed has a record on this.
Yeah. One of my favorite moments was David Muir fact checking whether or not Trump was being sarcastic in a prior interview. Listen to this. Trump says, I was being sarcastic, and David Muir fact checks him to say, no, he wasn't. Listen.
You lost the 2020 election. You repeatedly falsely claimed that you won, many times saying you won in a landslide. In the past couple of weeks leading up to this debate, you have said, quote, you lost by a whisker, that you, quote, didn't quite make it, that you came up a little bit short.
I said that?
Are you now acknowledging that you lost in 2020?
No, I don't acknowledge that at all.
But
I
you
said
did
that
say
sarcastically.
That.
You know that. It was said, we lost by a whisker. That was said sarcastically. Look, there's so much proof. All you have to do is look at it. And they should have sent it back to the legislatures for approval. I got almost 75 million votes, the most votes any sitting president has ever gotten. I was told if I got 63, which was what I got in 2016, you can't be beaten. The election, people should never be thinking about an election as fraudulent. We need two things. We need walls, and we have to have it. We have to have borders, and we have to have good elections. Our elections are bad. And a lot of these illegal immigrants coming in, they're trying to get them to vote. They can't even speak English. They don't even know what country they're in practically. And these people are trying to get them to vote. And that's why they're allowing them to come into our country.
I did watch all of these pieces of video. I didn't detect the sarcasm, lost by a whisker. We didn't quite make it. And we
What? So he says it, and now you can fact check it on stage. You're like, your intention was different.
No, it's so stupid and it's pointless, right? Because actually Trump here is getting dragged into a conversation he shouldn't be having. And he did at one point in the debate during some conversation about either 2020 or January 6th, circle back, and I hate to Jen Psaki this, but he circled back once to the idea that, like, that's old news. We're talking about the present and the future.
Yes.
And that's where he needs to be, because that messaging that you just heard is anathema to persuadable voters in the suburbs. They don't want to hear that. And so he got dragged into that. Muir's comment is so silly. Like, don't fact check his intentions. Dumb. And he needs to focus on the future. That's a moment where he can be focused on the future and say, these guys are stuck in the past. What are they talking about?
Well, I want to talk about something else with you too, Mary Catherine, while you're here, because I know you've been such a great supporter of the Travis Manion Foundation for so many years. And in honor of September 11th, there's a Heroes Run taking place in Northern Virginia. Can you tell us about this and how people can be involved?
Yeah, so this is in Oakton, Virginia, September 22nd. I will be there. You can sign up at 911heroesrun.com. It's a 5K. It's easy peasy. You guys can get out there. It's really good for families to connect them with the idea of our losses on 9/11, but in an uplifting way. There are families of the fallen out there to honor those who fought in the wars that were subsequent to that day. There are first responders out there. There are veterans who we honor. And it's a really great way to get your family connected with those wonderful communities and to thank those folks. So it's a great race, a great occasion, 911heroesrun.com. You can sign up for the one in Oakton and join me. It is a wonderful, a bit somber, but wonderful way to connect your family to this idea, to patriotism, to something their community does together in a time when, frankly, election year, maybe we don't feel so together. So it's a great occasion.
And by that time, the weather is almost guaranteed to be nice, knock on wood. And as you point out, it's a 5K, just 3.1 miles. So you can walk it without shame. Nobody's going to judge you for that.
Yeah. My kids are running it. I promise you can do it.
That's cool. That's very cool. Well, Mary Catherine is understating how athletic and awesome her family is. But Mary Catherine, thank you for being a great American. Always so nice to talk to you.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
That's Mary Catherine Hamm, the host of the Getting Hammered podcast, and as I said, a good American. Let's see here. It is 3:49.
WMAL, making sense of the markets, because generational wealth doesn't build itself. Download the WMAL app to stream us for free.
All right, let's go to Leo calling in from Colorado, line 9. Hello, Leo. You're on the Vince Coglianese Show.
I don't. Can you hear me?
I hear you. Great, Leo. What's up?
Okay. Hey, I'll still listen to music. I was wondering, you guys probably heard me last night because I was screaming at the top of my lungs when she was running her lips. When she started talking about this, she kept emphasizing, and nobody picked up on it, even after the fact, that she kept emphasizing, I'm from a middle-class family, working mother, blah, blah, blah. But as she sits living in the residence over at the Naval Observatory at the taxpayer expense, not having to drive down, fill up her gas tank, not go to the grocery store, watching prices go through the roof. Her argument that this administration has brought everything down is quite the opposite. And it was maddening to me, especially, going to the grocery store and watching things literally go up weekly.
Yes.
And I'm going, when the heck is this going to stop? It's got to stop, Vince.
Well, she has a home in Brentwood. Well, I was telling you earlier in the hour, she has a home in Brentwood. She leads a filthy rich lifestyle, an elitist lifestyle. In fact, let me just play a portion where she said she's a middle-class kid. I'm a middle-class kid. She came up, of course, like very wealthy and cosmopolitan.
Come to the economy. Do you believe Americans are better off than they were 4 years ago?
So I was raised as a middle-class kid. And I am actually the only person on this stage.
Oh, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, she was raised as a middle-class kid. She's fighting for the middle class. Another great moment when she was talking about how sometimes people have to get on airplanes and sit next to strangers. Did you hear that part? Where it's like, well, yeah, everyone. Listen to this part. Listen.
1 or 2 jobs who can barely afford childcare as it is have to travel to another state to get on a plane sitting next to strangers.
What? But everybody sits next to strangers on a plane, unless they live her lifestyle. Unless it's just a private plane and it's like hand invites to everyone who's on the plane with you. I'm always sitting next to strangers.
Yes. Just so everybody knows who have never been to California, I grew up out there as a kid in the 60s and 70s. Brentwood is equivalent to Beverly Hills. It's just, another version of where all the elites live in Southern California. So it's, it's not just a hood. It's not a neighborhood, suburb. It is like Beverly Hills.
Yeah. I'm
with all the bells and whistles.
From Brentwood,
yeah. And Compton too. Yeah.
They got hand signals and stuff and cool walks. Yeah, it's bizarre.
Thanks,
yeah, no problem, Leo. Thanks for the call. I was wondering why that screaming seemed to be coming from the direction of Colorado. Thank you for answering that question for me. Senator Roger Marshall from Kansas is going to join us next right here on the Vince Coglianese Show. Don't miss it. It's ahead.
News Talk 105.9 WMAL.
Making sense of the news.